The bottle slipped. It struck the plank floor and rolled until it kissed the leg of the table, milk warming the dust into a sour steam. Wade Mercer caught the sound too late. He had Rosie tucked against his chest. Her face beat red, fists locked, lungs tearing the night apart. Wind rammed the cabin walls and worried the shutters, the way it did when the prairie meant to finish what winter started. "Easy, sweetheart," he said, and his voice broke on the second word. He lifted the bottle again, tipped it just so, tried to find her mouth while keeping her head right. She turned away and wailed harder. The fire popped. A log shifted. Outside, the fence sang under the gusts. Wade's hands shook, not from cold. He was sweating through wool, but from the kind of tired that makes your bones hum. He bounced her once, twice. Her cry sharpened. He stopped. "I can't fail her." He set the bottle on the table and paced the narrow room, heel to toe, counting steps because counting kept him from cursing. Rosie bucked and screamed, the sound cutting clean through the wind. He kissed her damp forehead. It did nothing. He hummed a hymn he half remembered from Christmas services years ago, the tune his wife used to sing when she churned butter. The words wouldn't come, only the tune, thin as a wire. Wade reached for the bottle again. He warmed it closer to the fire, tested it on his wrist, held it out. Rosie gagged and spit, milk running from her mouth onto his sleeve. He swore, quiet. The bottle slipped again, and this time he let it go. It rolled. He watched it roll. "I used to be stronger." He dropped into the rocker by the hearth and pulled Rosie tight, her small back shuddering against his chest. The chair creaked. The fire breathed. Snow ticked the window like bony fingers. Wade rocked faster, then slower, then stopped. He pressed his cheek to her hair and whispered promises he couldn't keep if the night kept its grip. He had ridden today. He had ridden yesterday. Every door within miles had opened on pity and closed on the same answer. No babies, no milk, no help. The pastor's hands had folded and unfolded like paper birds. There was prayer. There was nothing else. Wade had come home and nailed a sign to the gate with numb fingers. Need help. Infant hungry. Breast milk needed. Hammering until the wood split because stopping felt worse. Rosie screamed until her breath hitched. Wade stood, paced again, counted again. He checked the latch, the fire, the kettle. He put water on and forgot it. He put it on again. He had not slept since the ground froze hard enough to take a coffin. The knock came like a gunshot. Once, twice, then again, fast and unsteady. Wade froze. Rosie's cry cut off for half a breath, then came back louder. He tightened his hold, heart pounding hard enough to bruise. The knock came again, weaker this time, like a hand losing its nerve. He moved to the door and cracked it an inch. Wind slapped his face white. Shape stood there, bent under the storm, cloak dark with wet. The shape sagged. "Please," a woman said, and the word fell apart on the wind. "I just need—" She pitched forward. Wade opened the door and caught her before she hit the boards, dragged her inside with his shoulder, kicked the door shut. Cold chased them in. He set her by the hearth and threw a blanket over her without letting go of Rosie. The woman coughed, shivered, breathed. Wet hair clung to her cheeks. She lifted her head and looked at the baby, and something in her face changed. Her hand flew to her chest. She pressed hard, winced, and swallowed. Rosie screamed. The woman's breath stuttered. Dark stains spread on the front of her blouse, slow and undeniable. She stared at them like they belonged to someone else. Tears welled, then fell. She stopped. She tried again. I still have milk. The words hung in the room. The fire popped. The wind shouldered the walls. Wade said nothing. He stared at the stains, then at Rosie's clenched mouth, then at the woman's shaking hands. The world narrowed to the space between his arms and hers. Let me, the woman said. Please. Wade's jaw tightened. He shifted Rosie, felt her ribs flutter against his palm, felt the heat of her skin. He thought of the sign on the gate, the hammer splitting wood, the way prayer sounded when it had nothing to land on. He nodded once. The woman took Rosie with a care that steadied her own shaking. She loosened her blouse with practiced motions that did not look practiced at all. Wade turned away at once and busied himself with the fire, though his eyes stayed on the hearth because looking anywhere else felt like stealing. The room filled with a small, hungry sound. A suck, then another. Rosie's body shuddered. The cry broke into breath. The sound changed. Wade gripped the poker until his knuckles went white. The woman gasped and sobbed at the same time, tears cutting clean tracks down her cheeks as milk flowed. It's all right, she murmured over and over. Eat, little one. I've got you. Wade closed his eyes. The fire breathed. Outside, the wind howled and could not get in. Please let this hold. He turned enough to see Rosie's fists loosen. Her mouth worked, steady now. The woman's shoulders shook, but she did not falter. Wade stepped close and draped another blanket around them both without touching skin, then stepped back again. What's your name? He asked, low. Adeline, she said, and bent to kiss Rosie's hair. Wade nodded. He did not offer his own. Names felt heavy. He set a chair close in case Adeline swayed. He checked the latch again. He stood where he could see the door and the fire and the small miracle in between. When Rosie slowed, when the room learned a new quiet, Adeline leaned back and closed her eyes. Thank you, she whispered, and the words sounded like they were meant for more than one person. Wade cleared his throat. You can stay, he said, till the storm breaks. Adeline opened her eyes. Relief crossed her face and something else chased it, fast and sharp. She reached into a worn leather satchel at her feet and drew out a thick envelope, its seal dull and crooked. She held it, then tucked it back as if the paper burned. I came back, she said, because someone is coming for your land. Wade felt the floor tilt under his boots. The wind hit the cabin hard, as if to underline the sentence. He looked at Rosie, asleep now against Adeline's chest, mouth slack with milk. He looked at the door. He looked at the fire. Stay the night, he said again, and the words landed heavier this time. Then tell me everything. The storm did not break. It settled in, crouched low around the cabin like an animal that had found heat and meant to keep it. Wade fed the fire until it took, then backed away and watched the room learn a slower breath. Adeline shifted Rosie, careful, practiced, the baby's cheek resting where warmth and rhythm lived. The wind kept its teeth on the walls. Inside, a kettle hissed and went quiet. Wade pulled a stool close and sat because standing made him feel like he might bolt. He rubbed his hands together, then stopped. "You said someone's coming," he said. "For the land." Adeline nodded once. She did not look up. "Not tonight," she said. "But soon." Rosie stirred. Adeline adjusted, murmuring. Wade noticed the way her voice stayed level, even when her hands trembled. He noticed the way Rosie's breathing evened, how the room held it. Wade crossed to the table and poured water, forgot to drink it, poured again. He leaned his hip against the wood and waited. Silence pressed. He let it. "I didn't mean to come back like this," Adeline said. "I meant to knock when it was daylight. I meant to speak plain." She swallowed. "The storm decided for me." Wade nodded. "Storms did that." She reached for the satchel again and set it on the table, then paused, eyes flicking to Rosie. Wade said nothing. Adeline drew out the envelope and laid it flat. The seal was cracked, wax dulled, pressed back into place poorly. The paper inside had been folded and unfolded too many times. "It came to me by mistake," she said. "Left where it shouldn't have been. I read it because it had your name." Wade did not touch the paper. And it wasn't right," she said. "Date's wrong. Witness wrong. The seal—" She stopped. "I can show you in the morning, with light." Wade exhaled through his nose. He had expected a fist. He had expected men. He had not expected paper. "Why you?" he asked. Adeline's mouth tightened. "Because I read," she said. "Because I don't look like trouble. Because people talk when they think you don't matter." Rosie sighed and slept deeper. The fire popped. Wade reached for another log and fed it in slow, careful movements. "You can take the bed," he said. "I'll take the floor." Adeline shook her head. "I'm fine here," she said, glancing at the rocker. "She'll need me again before morning." Wade fetched a quilt and folded it, placed it within reach. He set a tin mug of water beside the chair. He left space between them that felt like respect. When the wind lulled, Wade spoke again. "You said, came back." Adeline's eyes closed. "I was here once," she said. "Long enough to learn the road. Long enough to leave." Wade waited. "My boy," she said, and the word broke and kept going. "He lived 2 months, fever. Nothing took." She opened her eyes and looked at Rosie. "My body didn't learn the lesson. Every day it reminds me." Wade nodded. He had no words that wouldn't cheapen it. "I know this ache." Rosie stirred and rooted. Adeline shifted and fed her again without fuss. Wade turned to the fire and did not look. When Rosie slept, Adeline tucked the blanket tighter. Wade crossed the room and hammered together a frame from rough pine he had cut that afternoon, quick and quiet. The boards fit because he made them fit. He set the little bed in the corner, checked the corners twice, sanded a splinter smooth with the heel of his palm. "You didn't have to," Adeline said. "It ain't much," Wade said. "But it's yours while you're here." Adeline nodded. "It's more than I had tonight." Wade set a small jar by the wash basin. "For your hands," he said. "Bare fat. Winter does a number." She traced the rim with one finger. "Thank you." The night worked on. Snow fell heavier, softer. Rosie woke and slept and woke again, each time quieter. Wade lay on the floor near the hearth and did not sleep. He watched the ceiling and counted breaths that were not his. Near dawn, Adeline stood and moved about the room with a care that did not wake anything. She folded clothes that had never been folded right. She wiped a chin. She hummed the same tune Wade had tried earlier, and this time the words came. The sky lightened. The storm thinned its voice. When Wade finally slept, it was the kind that takes you without asking and leaves you empty-handed. He woke to the sound of wood splitting clean. He sat up, heart jumping, then saw Adeline at the block, sleeves rolled, hair tied back, axe rising and falling true. "Morning," she said. He stood, embarrassed by the ache in his joints. "Morning." They ate beans and bread. Rosie slept in the new bed, one fist by her cheek. "Town will talk," Wade said, not looking up. "They already do," Adeline said. He nodded. He had expected that too. Wade saddled his horse after breakfast. "I need salt," he said. "Lamp oil." Adeline's mouth tightened. "I can go." "No," he said. "You stay." He rode into town with the wind at his back and eyes on him when he arrived. Words stopped. A laugh snorted. Wade bought what he needed and paid. At the door, a man with a badge leaned in close. "Nice to have help," the man said. "Milk help." Wade did not answer. He stepped into the cold and left the words where they lay. Back at the cabin, Adeline had laid pine sprigs by the bed. The room smelled clean. Rosie smiled in her sleep. That afternoon, the kettle sang again. A parcel lay on the fence outside, left where it wouldn't require a knock. Adeline carried it in and set it on the table. She did not open it. "They won't knock," Wade said. "They don't have to," she said. Night came early. Snow fell quiet. Rosie fussed, then settled. Adeline sat by the hearth, needle flashing, mending a sleeve that did not need it. Wade watched and did not ask. "Wade," she said finally. He looked up. "If they come," she said, "they'll use the paper first." He nodded. "And if paper don't work?" She met his eyes. "Then they'll use fear." Wade stood and checked the latch. He set the rifle within reach and sat again. Rosie slept. The fire held. Outside, somewhere beyond the dark, a road waited for men who believed paper could take a child's warmth. Wade broke the quiet. "You can stay," he said. And this time it wasn't a kindness. It was a line. Adeline nodded once. "Then we stand here," she said. The wind tested the walls. The cabin did not move. The snow thinned to a pale drift by noon, the kind that hides ruts and keeps secrets. Wade worked the yard with steady hands, mending a hinge, splitting kindling, setting things right because rightness had weight. Inside, Adeline moved with Rosie tucked against her, the baby's cheek warm and quiet where hunger had been loud. A wagon passed on the road without slowing. Its wheels creaked once, then twice, then not at all. Adeline watched through the window and let the curtain fall. "They'll come," Wade said, not looking up. "They already have," Adeline said. He lifted the axe and brought it down. The block took the blow clean. The sound rang, sharp enough to answer the silence. After dinner, beans again, bread again, Wade saddled his horse and rode for nails and oil he didn't need. The town had decided he would go, so he went. He felt the eyes on his back before he reached the store. Conversations thinned when the bell rang. Mrs. Tilda stood behind the counter and did not smile. "Oil," Wade said. She slid the tin across and kept her hands on the wood. "You got help now," she said. "Some folks say it comes with conditions." Wade counted coins and laid them out flat. "Some folks say a lot." A man near the barrels laughed without humor. "Milk don't come free." Wade did not turn. He picked up the tin and left. Outside, the wind worried the signpost. He mounted and rode without looking back. At the edge of town, the deputy with the new badge stepped from the boardwalk and fell in beside him for 3 strides. "Careful," the man said. "Paper's patient. So are we." Wade kept his eyes on the road. "You done?" The deputy smiled and fell away. Back at the cabin, a bundle lay by the fence where the latch met the post. It had been set there careful, like a thought someone wanted to finish later. Adeline found it when she went for water. She brought it inside and set it on the table without opening it. "They won't knock," Wade said. "They don't want witnesses," she said. Rosie woke and cried, then quieted when Adeline lifted her. Wade turned to the fire. He fed it slow. Adeline opened the bundle after Rosie slept. Soap root. Cloth. A note folded once. No name. The hand was round, practiced, and unkind. "For the baby. Don't make it worse." Adeline smoothed the paper and burned it without a word. "I know this look." She stood later at the wash basin and pressed her palms to the wood until the ache in her chest eased. Milk stained the cloth again. She bit her lip and breathed through it, counted until the room steadied. That night, voices drifted up the road, not loud enough to belong to anyone, just enough to belong to everyone. Wade set the rifle where his hand could find it without searching. Adeline drew the rocker closer to the hearth and held Rosie, her back straight, her eyes on the door. The voices passed. The wind took them. Near midnight, a knock came. Not the 3 fast raps of need, but a measured tapping, polite as a bill. Wade opened the door and did not step aside. A man stood there with papers in his hand and a lantern held just high enough to show a badge. "Notice, the man said. "For the land. You'll want to read." Wade took the paper and closed the door. The latch clicked. The lantern light slid away. Adeline leaned forward. "That's the one," she said, and pointed without touching. "Look at the seal." Wade did. The wax had been pressed twice. The second mark sat crooked, careless. "They think you won't notice," she said. "They think you won't read." Wade folded the paper and set it under a crock. "We'll read it in daylight." Rosie slept through the night with one small sigh that felt like forgiveness. Wade did not sleep. Adeline dozed and woke and fed and dozed again, her breath finding a pattern that the room followed. At dawn, Wade walked the perimeter and found tracks where there shouldn't have been any. He kicked snow over them and said nothing. Adeline made coffee thin enough to stretch. She sat at the table and wrote a list from memory, neat and small, of names and dates that did not line up. When Wade came in, she slid it across. "Witness wrong," she said. "Date wrong. Seal wrong. It's enough." He nodded. "Enough for who?" "For a judge," she said. "Or a crowd." Wade thought of the way the parcel had been left. Crowds turn. They do, Adeline said. And they don't. They worked the day without speaking of it again. Wade repaired the barn door. Adeline washed and mended and fed Rosie until the baby smiled at the sound of water. A hymn floated through the room, not sung to heaven so much as to the work at hand. By afternoon, the wind shifted and dust lifted from the ridge. The snow was going to leave. With it, the cover. Mrs. Tilda came near sunset and did not knock. She stood at the fence and called out, her voice careful. "I brought cloth," she said, "for the child." Wade stepped onto the porch. "You can knock." She hesitated, then did. The sound felt like a decision. Wade opened the door and let her in. Mrs. Tilda set the cloth on the table and did not sit. "Folks are saying you're being taken," she said, "by paper." Wade folded his arms. "Folks say a lot." Mrs. Tilda glanced at Adeline, then at Rosie sleeping. "They're saying worse," she said, and swallowed. "They're saying she should go." Adeline did not flinch. "If I go," she said, "the baby goes hungry." Mrs. Tilda's eyes dropped. "I know," she said. "That's the trouble." She left with the cloth lighter and the room heavier. That night, Adeline heard the wagon again. This time it stopped. She counted the breaths it took to unload men. She counted wrong. She stood and wrapped Rosie in the quilt, hands steady because they had to be. She went to Wade and touched his arm. "They're not coming in," she said. "They're waiting." "For what?" "For you to choose." Wade went to the door and listened. The road breathed. Somewhere a man laughed. "They'll make it about me," Adeline said. "They already have." Wade closed the door and set his back to it. "They can't take what ain't theirs." "They don't need to," she said. "They can scare it loose." Rosie stirred and whimpered. Adeline pressed her cheek to the baby's head and felt the ache flare again, sharp and familiar. Not again. Before dawn, Adeline dressed without light. She folded the quilt and left it on the chair. She wrapped Rosie tight and stepped into the cold that smelled like iron. The road took her soundless. The storm had learned a new trick and erased her tracks as she went. Wade woke to quiet that did not belong. He reached for the Nor that was not there and felt the world fall sideways. He found the door open and the snow curling in like a breath. "Adeline," he said, and the word did not come back. He took his coat and his horse and the road that held nothing. The wind rose, eager now, and somewhere ahead a woman walked because standing still felt worse. Wade set his jaw and rode. He would find them. The horse labored into the white, head down, breath tearing the cold into ribbons. Wade leaned forward and let the animal find its own truth. Reins loose because force only made things worse. Snow stitched the road closed behind him. The fence posts came and went like thoughts you couldn't hold. He saw nothing for a mile. Then the shape appeared, low and wrong against the drifted field. What used to be a hay shed before a hard winter took its roof and most of its memory. Wade slid from the saddle before the horse fully stopped and went on foot. Boots breaking crust, lungs burning. Inside the crook of the fallen wall, Adeline sat with Rosie bundled to her chest, rocking too fast. murmuring words that had no shape. Her hair clung to her cheeks. Her eyes were wide, tracking everything and nothing. "Adeline," Wade said, and kept his voice small. "It's me." She flinched and tightened her hold. "They'll take her," she whispered. "They'll say I don't belong." Wade knelt in the snow where she could see his hands. "I'm not here to take anything," he said. "I'm here to bring you home." Rosie cried, the sound thin now, a thread stretched too far. Adeline rocked harder, then froze as if she had broken something. Wade shrugged out of his coat and laid it over her shoulders without touching skin. He waited. The wind passed them by. "She feels like mine," Adeline said, and the words fell apart. "And I can't lose her." "You haven't," Wade said. "You saved her." He reached for Rosie, slow and sure, took the baby when Adeline let go, tucked her into the crook of his arm the way he had learned in the worst nights. Rosie's cry softened at once. Wade held her there, steady, then turned and offered her back. Adeline took Rosie and sobbed into the quilt until there was nothing left to give. Wade waited until the shaking slowed, then helped her stand. He lifted her when her knees gave and carried them both through the white to the horse, the way a man carries what he means to keep. The cabin greeted them with a smell of ash and pine and something sweeter that had no name. Wade stoked the fire and set the kettle on, hands working because work knew how to be done. Adeline sat on the edge of the bed and pressed her forehead to Rosie's hair. The baby slept, spent and safe. "I didn't mean to run," Adeline said, when she could breathe. "I thought if I went quiet, it would pass." Wade nodded. Quiet only teaches loud men where to stand. He eased Rosie into the little bed and checked the corners again, habit and prayer in the same motion. He turned and crouched in front of Adeline, voice low. "You don't have to leave." Adeline shook her head. "I don't owe you." "I know," Wade said. "This ain't about owing." He held her eyes. "Stay. Not for the night. For good." The fire cracked. Adeline looked at the cradle, then at Wade's hands, scarred and open. "I'm not whole," she said. "I still wake up listening for a cry that won't come." Wade swallowed. "So do I." They sat with that until it softened. Adeline nodded once. "Okay," she said. "I'll stay. Don't take this back." Morning came clean and sharp. Wade split kindling with a steady rhythm and felt the world settle into it. Adeline fed Rosie and laid her down, then stepped outside with a shawl pulled tight. The road was quiet in a way that felt watched. The hooves came near noon. 3 of them. Wade set the axe down and wiped his hands on his trousers. He didn't rush. He didn't smile. The men dismounted without greeting. The one in front wore a badge too bright for honest work. He held a paper like it was already a verdict. "Time's up," he said. "That lands under lien." Wade did not move. "My brother's choices don't bind mine." "They bind the dirt," the man said, "and the dirt binds you." Adeline watched from the doorway with Rosie against her chest. Her breath went shallow. Wade felt it from where he stood. "We're not here to talk," another man said. "We're here to take." Wade stepped forward until the edge of the porch creaked. "Not from this house," he said. "Not from that child." The badge man laughed and shifted his weight toward the door. Wade reached for the bundle wrapped in oilcloth by the post and let it fall open in his hand. He did not raise it. He didn't need to. "I've got no quarrel with men doing honest work," Wade said. "But this is stealing." The badge man's eyes flicked to the road where shapes had gathered, neighbors drawn by sound and nerve. He spat and smiled thin. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," Wade said, "but I won't regret protecting my family." The word landed and stayed. Adeline's knees weakened. She gripped the doorframe and held. The men mounted and rode off, dust and cold swirling in their wake. Wade lowered the rifle and leaned against the post until his breath found him again. Inside, Adeline slid down the wall and laughed once, sharp and wet. "You called us?" "Because you are," Wade said. That afternoon, papers came again, this time carried by hands that shook. Adeline spread them on the table and pointed to what was wrong, plain and patient. A seal pressed twice, a date that chased itself, a witness who had been buried before the ink dried. By dusk, the story had teeth. By dark, it had witnesses. The days that followed moved like water finding its level. There were looks in town that softened, and some that did not. There were knocks that sounded like choices. Rosie learned to smile in her sleep. Adeline learned the garden. Wade learned how to sit without waiting for the floor to give way. Winter loosened its hold. The ground took a spade. Wade brought home a small fir, roots wrapped in burlap, stubborn and green. Adeline knelt and set it true while Rosie clapped at the dirt. "What is it?" the baby asked. Later, a word learned by listening. "A promise," Wade said. They stood there as the light went gold and then gone, hands touching because they belonged there now. The road breathed. Somewhere beyond it, a badge waited to be worn again. The town came slow after that. Not all at once, not with apology, but in the way snowmelt finds the low places first. A sack of flour appeared on the fence, then lamp oil. Someone knocked, softly, and left before Wade reached the door. Each thing carried the same weight, not forgiveness, just acknowledgement. Wade took what was for the house and left the rest where it lay. He learned the difference quick. Adeline kept the room steady. She fed Rosie on the same hours, sang the same tune, folded the same corners. Order was a rope. You held it or you fell. When the baby slept, Adeline spread the papers on the table and read them again, fingertip tracing the seam where wax had been reheated and pressed crooked. She did not rush. She did not speak until the fire breathed low and even. "They'll try another angle," she said. "Paper doesn't quit." Wade nodded. He had already felt it in the road's quiet, in the way men measured distance with their eyes. "When?" "Soon," Adeline said, "before the ground thaws enough to argue back." Rosie gurgled in her sleep, a small sound like a bell rung once and set down. Wade watched her chest rise and fall. He watched Adeline's hands as she stacked the pages, neat and certain. He trusted those hands now, the way he trusted the weather when it told the truth. That afternoon, the doctor came. He did not knock hard. He did not look at the rifle by the post. He set his bag on the table and listened to Rosie's heart, then Adeline's lungs, then Wade's silence. "She's thriving," he said, nodding toward the baby. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." Adeline smiled without showing her teeth. We are. The doctor tapped the paper with one finger. Bring these to the clerk, he said, and to the judge if it comes to that. He looked at Wade. You'll need witnesses. Wade thought of the fence line, the store, the way the knock had sounded when Mrs. Tilda finally used her hand. I know where to find some. Sunday came with a bell that sounded like mercy and warning, both. The town gathered because that was what towns did when they wanted to see themselves reflected back. Adeline dressed Rosie in clean cloth and tied her own hair back, plain and careful. Wade wore his good coat and felt like a boy in it. They sat near the back. The hymn rose and fell. Adeline bowed her head when the prayer came, not because she had been told to, but because the room needed it. Wade closed his eyes and thought of Christmases when his wife had hummed the same tune by the stove. He did not ask for anything. He listened. Afterward, the pastor cleared his throat and spoke of truth and patience and the kind of justice that did not need shouting. He did not name names. He did not have to. The room shifted its weight. Outside, a man with clean gloves waited by the steps. He smiled like a habit. Mr. Mercer, he said. Mrs., Adeline said, and did not explain. Faith? Man's smile flickered. There's a hearing, he said. You're invited. Wade took the paper. When? Tomorrow, the man said. Early. Paper has a way of choosing its hours. That night, Adeline laid out what they would bring. The letter with the reheated seal, the clerk's ledger copy, the list of dates, the name of a witness who had been buried before he could sign again. Wade fetched the jar with the baby's spoon and set it beside the stack. They'll say it's nothing, he said. They'll say that because they hope it is, Adeline said. Hope makes men careless. Rosie woke hungry. Adeline fed her by firelight and watched the baby's eyes close. Wade stood guard without standing, a presence the room leaned on. Hold, just hold. Morning came hard and bright. Frost snapped under boots. The clerk's office smelled of ink and wood polish and old decisions. Wade and Adeline sat side by side while men shuffled paper and cleared throats. The badge shone from a chest too clean for the work it pretended to do. The man with the smile spoke first. He spoke of debts inherited and land that did not remember love. He spoke as if the ground were a thing you could fold. Adeline waited. When the nod came, she stood. She did not raise her voice. She did not hurry. This seal, she said, holding the envelope where everyone could see it, pressed twice, once honest, once not. She passed it to the clerk, then the ledger. This witness, she said, pointing, buried before this date. Here is the record. The room made a sound like a single breath taken wrong. The man with the smile laughed and stopped laughing. Coincidence, he said. Adeline nodded. 3 coincidences, she said, and set the baby's spoon on the table. This mark belongs to the man who made it. He's in the room. All eyes turned. Silas Holt stood, slow and solid, cap in his hands. That's mine, he said. I made it. I remember the day. The badge man shifted. He reached for his belt and found nothing there that would help. The clerk cleared his throat again. We'll recess, he said. This will be reviewed. Outside, the wind tested coats and lost interest. Wade let his breath go. Adeline sat on the steps and laughed once, then covered her mouth like she had said something improper. "That's not the end," Wade said. "No," Adeline said. "It's the middle." The town leaned closer after that. Some with warmth, some with curiosity sharpened to a point. Mrs. Tilda brought sugar and did not leave it on the fence. A boy ran errands for free and ran faster when Wade tried to pay him. The bell rang again the next Sunday and sounded less like warning. At dusk, a wagon stopped on the road and did not unload men. A note lay where the wheel had cut the dirt. Wade read it and folded it and fed it to the fire. "They're waiting," he said. Adeline nodded. She held Rosie and watched the flames take, paper the way paper deserved. Night came quiet. Too quiet. Wade checked the latch and the back door and the windows. Habit laid down like track. He set the rifle where his hand knew it would be. A stone struck the wall and fell. Another followed, closer. Rosie startled and cried. Adeline moved without thinking, turning her body into shelter. Wade stepped onto the porch. "That's far enough," he said, and did not raise the rifle. A shape laughed from the dark. "Paper's patient," a voice said. "So are we." Wade stood until the dark learned him and backed away. He went inside and closed the door. Adeline's face was pale, but her hands were steady. "They won't stop," she said. "No," Wade said. "They'll change." He sat at the table and took up the pen, the one he had not trusted himself with since his wife's name had gone cold on paper. He wrote slow. He wrote plain. "What are you doing?" Adeline asked. "Making it harder," Wade said. He slid the paper across when he finished. Adeline read it once, then again. Her throat worked. "You don't owe me," she began. "I know," Wade said. "This ain't owing." Rosie slept, thumb in her mouth, breath even as a promise kept. The fire held. Outside, the road breathed and waited. Adeline folded the paper and tucked it into the ledger with the rest. She looked at Wade, eyes clear now. "Then we go forward," she said. Wade nodded. Together. The wind touched the walls and let them be. Somewhere beyond the dark, a man with a badge counted time. Winter loosened its grip by inches, not mercy. The snow went gray at the edges, then black where hooves cut it, then gone in strips that showed dirt like old scars. Wade worked the land the way you work a wound, clean, patient, no sudden moves. Adeline kept the house steady. Rosie grew rounder, heavier, her cries shorter, her smiles quicker to come. The paper did not go away. It arrived folded different each time, carried by different hands, spoken by different mouths that all said the same thing. This can be easier. Wade read and burned. Adeline read and kept notes in the margins of memory. They did not argue about it. Arguing spent breath better saved. The doctor came again and stayed longer. He listened to Rosie and then to Adeline's heart, and then to Wade's silence. "They're pushing," he said. "That means you're standing." Wade nodded. Standing was something he knew how to do. Sunday brought a sermon that named no one and warned everyone. Afterward, a woman Wade had never spoken to pressed his hand and said, "I lost a boy once." Then she walked away before he could answer. The town was learning how to touch a thing without breaking it. That afternoon, Wade found the back gate open and the hinge loosened. He fixed it and did not look up when Adeline came out with Rosie bundled tight. They're testing, she said. They always do, he said. Night came with a moon thin as a blade. The fire burned low. Adeline fed Rosie and laid her down, then sat at the table with the ledger open. Wade watched the way her finger traced lines as if they were roads she could walk. "Tell me about the letter," he said. Adeline did not look up. "It was meant for someone else," she said. "A clerk's wife, maybe. Or a man who reads for hire. It named the land and the date and the seal. It told the truth by accident." Wade smiled once, crooked. "Accidents have a way." Adeline closed the book. "They'll try to take her," she said. Wade did not ask who. He set the rifle across his knees and cleaned it slow. "I won't let them." The knock came after midnight. Not loud, not polite. A fist that knew where it was. Wade opened the door and stepped onto the porch before the room could gather itself. 3 men stood in the moonlight. No badge this time. No paper. The truth in that was clean. "Evening," the tallest said. "We just want a word." "You can have it from there," Wade said. The man smiled. "We hear you're making trouble." Wade rested the rifle against the post. He did not raise it. "You hear wrong." Another man shifted his weight. "That woman," he said. "She don't belong." Wade felt the house at his back, the baby's breath, the fire holding. "She does," he said. The tallest man stepped closer. "Paper's patient," he said, "but men get tired." Wade leaned forward until the porch creaked. "I don't," he said. The men laughed and backed away because laughter is easier than learning. The road took them. The moon kept its blade. Inside, Adeline stood with Rosie pressed to her shoulder, her eyes steady. "They'll come again," she said. "Yes," Wade said, "but not tonight." The next morning, Wade rode to the clerk and did not leave until his name sat where it belonged. He rode to the judge and did not leave until the dates were read aloud. He rode home with a piece of paper folded careful in his pocket and the feeling of time shifting under him. Adeline read it twice. "This helps," she said. "It buys us daylight," Wade said. Rosie laughed at the sound of his voice and slapped the table with her palm. Wade laughed too, surprised by it, and Adeline watched the sound find him like a hand. Let this last. Spring came the way it always does, pretending it had nothing to do with winter. The creek ran loud. The fence needed mending. Wade fixed it. Adeline planted onions and herbs and a row of peas. Rosie learned to crawl and then to pull herself up on Wade's leg, demanding to be held because she could. The town adjusted. Not everyone. Enough. Then the badge came back, polished to hurt your eyes. Orson Pike dismounted slow and smiled like a man who had decided to be reasonable. "Mr. Mercer," he said. "Miss Shaw." "Mrs." Adeline said, and set Rosie on her hip. Orson's smile thinned. "I'm here to resolve," he said, "before this becomes unpleasant." Wade folded his arms. "It already is." Orson held out a paper. "Sign," he said, "and we all go home." Adeline stepped forward. "That paper is wrong," she said. "You know it." Orson shrugged. "Paper remembers what men tell it." Adeline met his eyes. "So do people." The road behind him held shapes now, neighbors drawn by the sound of it. Orson saw them and adjusted. "There's another way," he said. "The child." Wade moved without thinking. He stepped between Orson and the door. The rifle stayed where it was. His hands were empty. "Don't," he said. Orson smiled. "Careful," he said. "That's a threat." "No," Wade said. "It's a promise." Silence stretched. A bird took off from the fence and made it louder. Adeline spoke then, clear and calm. "You don't want witnesses," she said. "You don't want questions. You don't want the dates read again." Orson looked at the road and counted faces. He looked at the baby's eyes, bright and unafraid. He spat and stepped back. "This isn't over," he said. Wade nodded. "It never is." Orson mounted and rode. The dust settled slow. That night, Adeline sat by the hearth and held Rosie until the baby slept. Wade sat across and watched the fire burn low, the way it always did before morning. "What happens when it comes back?" Adeline asked. Wade thought of the paper in his pocket, the ledger on the table, the town learning how to knock. "We keep standing," he said. Adeline nodded. She reached across the space between them and took his hand. The touch was light and sure, like a thing chosen. Outside, the road breathed. Inside, the fire held just enough to last until dawn. The road did not bring Orson Pike back right away. It brought smaller things first, the way trouble learns a place before it claims it. A fence rail snapped overnight and lay where it fell, clean and deliberate. A chicken went missing without a sound. The well rope was cut halfway through and left hanging, a lesson you could read without letters. Wade fixed what could be fixed and marked what could not. Adeline noticed everything and said only what mattered. "They're counting," she said, "to see how tired you get." Wade nodded. He felt the count in his shoulders at dusk and in his hands before dawn. Rosie felt it too. She clung tighter when the house creaked, watched the door with a seriousness that did not belong to her age. Sunday came again. The bell rang, not loud, but steady. Wade went. Adeline stayed. They had learned which absences spoke louder. The sermon ended without blessing. Outside, the air held its breath. A wagon stood by the steps with no team hitched, its bed empty except for a crate tied with twine. Wade stopped. "Package," said a man he did not know. "For the Mercer place." Wade cut the twine with his knife and lifted the lid. Inside lay papers folded wrong and a small silver thing he recognized at once. Rosie's spoon. The man shifted his weight. "No charge," he said, and left before Wade could speak. Wade rode home fast. The wind took his hat and kept it. He did not stop. Adeline saw his face before he reached the porch. "They touched her," she said, and did not ask. Wade set the crate on the table and opened it fully. The papers inside were copies, bad ones, of the same false claim. Ink darker, seal worse. The spoon lay on top like a dare. "They want me loud," Wade said. "They want you wrong," Adeline said. Rosie crawled to the table and slapped the wood, smiling at the sound. Adeline lifted her and turned her away from the crate. That night, the knock came again, harder this time, and not alone. Wade opened the door to faces he knew and faces he did not, men standing in the shape of a decision. Orson Pike stood at the edge of it, clean as ever. "You've got something of mine," Orson said. Wade held up the spoon. "Belongs to the child." Orson smiled thin. "Everything does, eventually." Adeline stepped into the doorway with Rosie on her hip. The baby's eyes fixed on the badge and did not blink. "Leave," Adeline said. Orson looked at the road, then back. "Tomorrow," he said. "Bring the papers to town. We'll finish this proper." "And if we don't?" Wade asked. Orson's smile widened. "Then the road keeps teaching." They left the way men do when they expect to be followed. Wade did not follow. The night stretched thin. Adeline did not sleep. She paced the room with Rosie until the baby's breath deepened. She set the spoon back in the jar and pushed it to the far corner of the shelf. "He's baiting you," she said. Wade sat at the table and unfolded the good paper, the one that bought daylight. "He's running out of it." "Men like him borrow time," Adeline said. "They don't earn it." Before dawn, Adeline dressed without sound. She tied her hair back and folded Rosie's blanket twice. She wrote 3 lines on a scrap of paper and left it where Wade would find it if he woke. When the door opened, it was not the wind that took her. It was choice. Wade woke to quiet that pressed too close. He found the scrap on the table and read it once. "They want you loud. I won't give them that. She needs calm. I'll come back when the road stops watching." He took his coat and his horse and the place where panic lives and rode past it. The creek ran high and brown, hiding tracks. The cottonwoods whispered and kept their counsel. Wade rode until the world narrowed to movement and breath. He found the broken shed again, then passed it. He found nothing that belonged to Adeline and everything that belonged to men waiting. At the edge of town, the road split. Wade chose the one that did not look like sense. He found Adeline at the old schoolhouse, roof sagging, door hanging by one hinge. She sat on the steps with Rosie asleep against her chest, the baby's mouth open, trusting the wrong place to be right. "They followed me part way," Adeline said. Then they stopped. Wade dismounted slow. "They want me to find you." Adeline nodded. "They want you to be seen." Wade looked at the road, the rise, the open space that made a man small. "We won't give them that either." They waited until the sun stood high enough to make decisions for men. Wade led the horse through the trees and back by a line that did not belong to anyone. They reached the cabin when the shadows were short and the watchers bored. Orson Pike came at dusk, alone this time, without the town to lean on. He stood in the yard and did not knock. "You're making this harder," he said. Wade stepped onto the porch. Adeline stayed inside with Rosie, the baby's hand fisted in her collar. "Hard as honest," Wade said. Orson's eyes flicked to the door. "You can't keep her hidden." "I'm not," Wade said. "I'm keeping her safe." Orson shrugged. "Tomorrow," he said. "Town hall. Bring your witnesses." "Gladly," Wade said. That night, the fire burned low and steady. Adeline sat across from Wade and folded the same cloth again and again until it was square enough to be done. "You shouldn't have gone," Wade said, not accusing. "I shouldn't have stayed," Adeline said. "Not when they wanted me to be the noise." Rosie stirred and whimpered. Adeline lifted her and fed her by firelight, the room learning that rhythm again. Wade turned away and let the sound anchor him. "Let me hold this line." Morning came with a sky too blue for mercy. The town hall filled slow. The clerk shuffled paper. Orson Pike stood where men like him stood. Wade brought the doctor, the smith, the ledger, the dates. Adeline brought Rosie. The room quieted when the baby laughed. Orson spoke of debt and order. Adeline spoke of seals and dates. The smith spoke of marks that do not lie. The doctor spoke of a child who lived because someone chose care over fear. When Orson reached for the spoon, Wade stepped forward and said one word: "Enough." The room held it. The clerk read the dates again. The judge asked questions that did not bend. Outside, the road listened. By dusk, the hall emptied. Orson left without shaking hands. Wade did not follow. Adeline did not look back. They walked home together, Rosie between them, the town watching and learning how to watch without teeth. At the fence, Wade stopped. "They'll try again," he said. Adeline nodded. But not the same way. The road breathed behind them and did not move. The town did not clap. It did not cheer. It did the quieter thing. Doors opened again and stayed open a beat longer than before. Men nodded without smiling. Women set baskets down and waited to see if anyone would knock. Wade noticed because he had learned to count the small mercies the way he once counted steps. At the fence, he stopped and rested his palm on the post. The wood was warm from sun. Adeline shifted Rosie and let the baby's weight settle where it belonged. The child slept with her mouth open, trusting the air to be kind. "We don't rush," Wade said. Adeline nodded. "We don't hide." They walked the last stretch slow, letting the road watch them choose it. Inside, the cabin felt bigger for having been tested. The fire took a match and held. Adeline laid Rosie in the little bed and straightened the blanket with a care that felt like prayer without words. Wade set the ledger on the table and slid the spoon back into its jar. He did not put the lid on. That night, someone knocked and waited. Wade opened the door to Mrs. Tilda, hat in her hands, eyes tired. "I brought sugar," she said, "and flour, not charity." Wade stepped aside. "Then come in." She set the sack down and looked at Rosie sleeping. "She's a good weight," she said, as if it mattered to say it aloud. "It is," Adeline said. Mrs. Tilda cleared her throat. "Some folks won't stop," she said, "but some will." "Enough," Wade said, and it was not the word from the hall. It was softer. When she left, the room settled into a quiet that felt earned. Adeline sat at the table and folded paper until it lay square. Wade watched her hands and thought of the way she had stood in front of men who mistook paper for power. Don't let this slip. The days that followed did not behave. A rail broke and was mended. A cow spooked and was calmed. The well rope was cut again and replaced with chain. Wade did not speak of it. He fixed what could be fixed and stood where standing mattered. Adeline went to town with Rosie on her hip and returned with what they needed and what they did not ask for. People looked and looked away. A woman touched the baby's foot and cried without warning. Adeline held still and let it pass. On Sunday, the bell rang and sounded like weather. Adeline went this time. Wade stayed. They traded places because strength has seasons. The sermon ended without calling anyone out. Outside, a boy ran up with a note folded too many times. "He's coming," it said, with a writ. Wade burned it and said nothing. Orson Pike arrived at dusk with 2 men and a wagon that carried a desk, like it meant to make the yard into an office. He did not knock. He set his boots where the grass bent. "We finish tonight," Orson said. Wade stood on the porch with empty hands. "Read it," he said. Orson unfolded the paper slow and loud. He spoke of liens and forfeiture and timelines that sounded reasonable if you did not know how reason was made. He held the seal up to the light and smiled like a man who had practiced smiling. Adeline stepped out with Rosie. The baby blinked at the wagon and reached for the shine. "That seal," Adeline said. "Show it again." Orson lifted it higher. Adeline stepped closer, close enough to see the press and the lie. "It's reheated," she said. "Pressed twice, you know that." Orson shrugged. "Paper remembers what men tell it." Wade felt the crowd gather at the edge of the yard without being called. Mrs. Tilda, the smith, the doctor, the boy with the note, a farmer with his hat crushed between his hands. Adeline held Rosie higher. "This child lives here," she said. "By care, by choice." Orson laughed once. "Choice don't beat law." "Sometimes," Wade said, "it does." Orson's eyes flicked to the crowd. "We can make this quiet," he said. "You sign. She goes. The child—" Wade stepped forward. "Don't." Orson smiled. "That's a threat." "No," Wade said. "That's the line." The doctor cleared his throat. "I'll testify," he said. The smith nodded. "Me too." Mrs. Tilda took a step forward she had never taken before. "I'll knock," she said. "I'll knock loud." The crowd leaned. Orson saw it and adjusted. "Fine," he said. "We do it proper." He reached for the spoon jar. Adeline moved first. She turned her body and made herself a wall. Rosie pressed to her chest. Wade moved with her, shoulder to shoulder, not touching, but there. "Enough," Wade said. The word went out and came back changed. Orson stopped. The men behind him shifted. The wagon creaked. Orson folded the paper. "Tomorrow," he said. "Town hall. Again." "Gladly," Adeline said. He mounted and left. The crowd did not follow him. It followed itself back home. That night, Wade took up the pen again. He wrote slow and plain. He set the paper in front of Adeline and waited. She read it once. Her breath caught. She read it again. "This is—" She stopped. "Guardianship," Wade said. "Legal, temporary, until the court says otherwise." Adeline's eyes filled and did not spill. "You don't owe me." "I know," Wade said. "This ain't owing." Rosie slept through it. One hand fisted in the quilt like she owned the place. They signed by firelight with the doctor and Mrs. Tilda as witnesses because witnesses were learning how to stand. The next day, the hall filled again. The clerk read. The judge asked questions that did not bend. Orson spoke and was interrupted by dates that refused to move. The seal was passed hand to hand and found wanting. The decision came without flourish. The land stayed. The paper burned. Outside, the road listened and did not argue. Wade and Adeline walked home with Rosie between them. At the fence, Wade stopped and took a knife from his pocket. He cut 3 small marks into the beam above the door, careful and true. "R," he said. "A-W." Adeline touched the wood with her fingertips. You didn't have to. I wanted to, Wade said. Spring took the last of the snow that week. The creek ran clear. The peas broke ground. Wade brought home a young fir and set it by the fence where the wind bent, but did not break. What is it? Adeline asked. A promise, Wade said. They planted it together. Rosie slept on Adeline's chest, breath even as a kept word. At dusk, the light went gold and then gone. The town sat back on its heels. Somewhere beyond the rise, a man counted losses. Wade held the gate while Adeline passed through. Whatever comes, he said. Adeline nodded. We choose. The fire took the night and held. The road breathed, and for once let them be. The fir took root the way stubborn things do, quietly, without asking permission. Its needles caught the light and kept it, even when the wind came sideways. Wade checked the soil each morning and pressed it firm with his boot. Adeline watered it at dusk and said nothing, as if speaking might jinx the agreement between earth and patience. Rosie learned the yard by sound. The creak of the gate meant Wade. The scrape of the bucket meant water. The hush of Adeline's skirt meant food and sleep. She babbled at the fir as if it could answer. Sometimes it did, in the way leaves move when a child believes they should. Paper did not stop coming. It changed its coat. A letter arrived with a proper seal and a polite hand, inviting Wade to town for clarification. Another came to Adeline praising her temporary service and suggesting she consider other arrangements before attention turned unkind. Wade burned his, Adeline folded hers and kept it with the ledger. They're narrowing, she said. They always do, Wade said. The knock came late afternoon, the careful kind that wanted to be heard. Wade opened the door to a man with dust on his cuffs and worry behind his eyes, a rancher from upriver. He held his hat and did not step inside. They're talking about a vote, he said. Town council, whether the place is suitable. For a child? Wade asked. The man nodded. For a woman, he said, and winced. For you. Wade looked back at Adeline inside, Rosie asleep on her shoulder, the fire breathing easy. Then they should come knock, he said. The man left without saying more. The road took his apology and kept it. That night, Adeline sat at the table and untied the ribbon that held her past together. She laid out certificates and letters, names written clean and true, dates that refused to move. Wade watched and learned where the knots had been. I didn't come back for shelter, Adeline said. I came back because I can read what they're doing, because I won't trade that for quiet. Wade nodded. I won't ask you to. Say it plain. I want you here, he said. Not because of the baby, not because of paper. Adeline looked at him then, really looked. I know, she said. The council met the next day in a room that smelled like varnish and old arguments. Wade stood. Adeline sat. Rosie slept. Men cleared throats. A woman coughed. A motion was made and seconded. Words like propriety and order floated, light enough to be dangerous. Adeline waited until the words tired themselves out. May I speak? She asked. The chair nodded because denying it would look worse. Adeline stood and did not raise her voice. This is my work, she said, and set the papers down. This is my child by guardianship. This is my home by choice. She looked at the room and did not blink. If you vote on suitability, vote on truth. Read the dates. Touch the seals. The clerk passed. The papers. Fingers found the lies and let them go. The vote did not come. The room adjourned without saying why. Outside, the sky threatened rain and did not follow through. Orson Pike did not show himself for 3 days. When he did, it was at the edge of the yard at dusk, alone. He did not carry paper. He carried patience sharpened to a point. "You've made yourself difficult," he said. Wade stood on the porch. "You made yourself unnecessary." Orson smiled. "I don't lose," he said. "Men say that," Adeline said from the doorway. "Right before they do." Orson's eyes flicked to Rosie and back. "You think the town will keep you?" he asked. "I think the town is learning," Wade said. Orson laughed once, short. "Then we try another road." He left without dust. The quiet after him felt watched. That night, Adeline woke to the sound of glass giving way. Wade was on his feet before the sound finished falling. He found the back window broken and nothing taken. A message that didn't need words. Rosie cried. Adeline soothed. Wade boarded the window and set the rifle where it belonged. "They're done asking," Adeline said. "They'll ask one more time," Wade said. "Loud." It came with hooves and a wagon, and men who wanted witnesses. Orson stood with a writ held high and a deputy too eager to please. The crowd gathered because crowds do that when a thing might break. "This is unlawful occupancy," Orson said, "by a woman without claim." Adeline stepped forward with Rosie. "I have claim," she said, "by guardianship." Orson snorted. "Temporary." Wade held up another paper. "Adoption," he said. The word rippled. Adeline's breath caught. Wade had written it and filed it and waited until the hour required it. The doctor stood forward. Mrs. Tilda nodded. The clerk swallowed and read. Orson's mouth tightened. "You can't." "You can," the judge said from the edge of the crowd, robes forgotten. "And you did." The deputy shifted. Orson reached for the spoon jar again, old habit dying hard. Adeline moved first. She set Rosie down behind her and stood empty-handed. "Don't," she said, and the room leaned with her. Wade stepped beside her. "Enough," he said. This time the word did not need echo. Orson backed away. "This isn't over," he said. "It is for us," Adeline said. He left. The crowd breathed out. Someone clapped and stopped themselves. Someone laughed and cried at the same time. That evening, Wade brought out a plank and nails and set it over the hearth. He wrote 3 names where knots once held the beam together. He did not rush. He did not erase. Rosie slept through it. Adeline watched and touched the wood when it was done. "Family," she said. Wade nodded. "Chosen." Rain came at night, gentle and sure. The fir drank. The house held. The road listened and learned something new. In the quiet before dawn, Adeline woke and went to the window. She watched the sky pale and felt the ache ease just a little. Wade stood behind her and did not speak. Whatever came next, it would find them standing. Summer did not arrive all at once. It tested the ground with heat, pulled back, tried again. The fir held its green. The creek ran lower and clearer. The cabin learned new sounds, peas popping in the pan, Rosie laughing when Wade tossed her just high enough to steal her breath, Adeline reading by the window when the light behaved. The road stayed quiet long enough to feel like a trick. Wade fixed fence and roof and the hinge that had learned to complain. He mended what had been broken on purpose and what had broken by time, treating both the same. Adeline kept accounts and planted rows straight enough to satisfy the part of her that liked proof. Rosie learned to stand without holding on and laughed when she fell because someone always caught her. Paper tried again. It came folded careful, delivered by a boy who didn't know what he carried. Wade read it once and set it down. Adeline read it twice and nodded. "They're appealing," she said. "It's thinner." "Thin cuts," Wade said. The doctor came at dusk and stayed to eat. He spoke of cases that turned on commas and men who lost sleep over dates that refused to move. He held Rosie until she fell asleep on his shoulder and handed her back like a promise he couldn't keep. "They'll try to move you," he said. "Not the land, the people." Adeline closed her book. "By fear?" "By comfort," he said. "By offering something easier." They did not speak of it again until the wagon came with a gift and a note. The gift was a crib, new and polished, better than the one Wade had made with tired hands and love. The note was neat, for the child, from friends. Wade stood in the yard and looked at the wagon until the driver shifted. "Take it back," Wade said. The driver shrugged. "It's paid." "So is trouble," Wade said. "Take it back." The wagon left without the crib. The road carried it away and did not look back. That night, a man Wade knew well enough knocked and waited. He held a deed and a smile he had practiced. "They'll give you a place closer to town," he said. "Safer. Schools. You sign, you move. Quiet." Wade listened. Adeline listened. Rosie slept. "No," Wade said. The man sighed like someone disappointed by weather. "Think on it." "We did," Adeline said. He left and took his smile with him. The next morning, the bell rang twice. That meant meeting, not prayer. Wade went. Adeline stayed. They had learned which absences spoke louder. The room filled and thinned and filled again. Words like community and order took turns wearing coats they didn't own. Wade stood and spoke once. "We're not moving," he said, "and we're not hiding." The vote did not come. It never did when it mattered. The chair adjourned and men went home to decide what they believed they had decided. At the fence that afternoon, a woman Wade had never spoken to set down a basket and said, "My sister lost a baby once." Then she left before Wade could answer. The basket held apples bruised and sweet. Adeline peeled one and handed it to Rosie. The baby gnawed and laughed, juice running down her wrist. "Comfort," Adeline said, and set the peel aside. "They're trying comfort." "They won't outlast her," Wade said, nodding at Rosie. "Please let that be true." The night came warm and wrong. Wade woke to the sound of hooves and sat up already dressed. He stepped onto the porch and saw the shape of a face without a lantern. Men moved like they meant to be unseen. Wade raised his hand and the men stopped. "That's far enough," he said. A voice answered from the dark. "We just want to talk." "You've had your talk," Wade said. Inside, Adeline stood with Rosie pressed to her chest, breath steady, eyes on the door. Wade felt it like a line pulled taut behind him. The men shifted. A stone hit the ground and did not bounce. Another followed. Wade stepped forward until the night learned his shape. "Go home," he said. "Or come in the morning with paper." Silence stretched. Then a laugh broke it, thin and mean. "You think you won," the voice said. Wade did not answer. He did not need to. The men left because leaving is easier than learning. At dawn, the sheriff came alone, hat in hand, eyes tired. He stood by the fence and waited to be invited. Wade invited him. "They're done with tricks," the sheriff said. "They'll push it clean now." "Clean how?" Wade asked. "By force that looks like law," the sheriff said. "I can't stop everything." Adeline set Rosie down and came to stand beside Wade. "You can stop enough," she said. The sheriff nodded. "I can stand where it matters." That afternoon, Orson Pike returned with paper that tried to look honest and men who tried to look patient. The crowd gathered because the road had learned the sound of this thing. Orson read. Wade listened. Adeline watched the seal and the hands that held it. When Orson reached the line about removal, Adeline stepped forward. "Read the adoption," she said. Orson did not. Wade held it up. "Read it." The sheriff cleared his throat. "Read it." The clerk read. The words did not bend. The dates held. Orson's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, too close, and looked at Rosie like a man looking for leverage. Adeline moved. She turned her body into shelter, empty hands raised. Wade stepped with her, shoulder to shoulder, the space between them gone. "Enough," Wade said. This time the sheriff echoed it. The crowd echoed it without sound. Orson backed away and said nothing else. He mounted and left like a man who had lost track of time. The days after tasted different. The fur grew. The peas climbed. Rosie learned a new word and used it wrong, and laughed when it didn't matter. One evening, Wade brought home a small ring he had found in a box his wife had kept for winter things. He set it on the table and did not touch it. "I don't want to make this a bargain," he said. Adeline looked at the ring and then at him. "It isn't," she said. They did not put it on. They put it away with the papers, where it could wait. The wind shifted that week and carried the smell of rain. The road breathed and did not bring trouble with it. Wade fixed the gate and set it to swing true. At dusk, he stood with Adeline and Rosie at the fence and watched the light go. The fur caught it and kept it. "What happens if they come again?" Adeline asked. Wade thought of the sheriff's tired eyes, the crowd learning to stand, the child between them. "We stand," he said. Rosie clapped like she agreed. The fire burned low and steady. The house held. The road listened and for once had nothing to say. The trouble did not come at night. It came at noon, when shadows were short and excuses thinner. Wade was at the fence mending wire when the wagon rolled into view. 3 men this time. No lanterns, no smiles, papers held high like shields. Orson Pike rode beside them, hat clean, coat brushed, badge catching the sun as if it wanted to be seen. Adeline felt it before she heard it. She lifted Rosie from the quilt and stepped onto the porch, the baby's weight familiar and anchoring. The fur whispered once and went still. "This is the last time," Orson said. loud enough for the yard, for the road, for the neighbors who had learned when to drift closer. Court's order. Removal. Wade tied off the wire and wiped his hands. He did not hurry. He walked to the porch and stood beside Adeline, not in front of her, not behind, with her. "Read it," Wade said. Orson unfolded the paper and read until the words reached the place they always reached. He paused there, the practiced pause of a man who believed in timing. Adeline stepped forward. "You missed a page." Orson's mouth tightened. "There's no—" Adeline reached into the ledger and laid the missing page on the rail. The seal was clean. The date was clean. The names were not afraid. The clerk who had ridden with them leaned in, eyes narrowing. "That's—" "Read it," Wade said. The clerk read. The words landed and did not move. Orson laughed once, sharp. "Paper again," he said. "Paper won't stop what's coming." He nodded to one of the men who stepped closer to the porch. Too close, eyes flicking to Rosie. The baby blinked at him and reached for the shine on his belt. Adeline turned her body without thinking. Rosie pressed to her chest, her back straight. Wade felt the moment pull tight, like a rope about to snap. "No," Wade said. Quiet. Clear. The man took another step. "Enough," Wade said, louder this time. The word carried. It crossed the yard and found ears it hadn't found before. Mrs. Tilda stood by her fence with both hands on the rail. The doctor stood near his buggy. Silas Holt set down his hammer. The sheriff came from the road and did not run. Orson saw it and recalculated. "You're interfering with lawful action," he said. The sheriff stepped forward. "I am the law," he said, and his voice was tired and true. "And this isn't it." Orson's jaw worked. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," Wade said, "but not today." The men shifted. One looked back at the wagon, another looked at the road. Orson held his ground a beat longer than he should have, then folded the paper with care that looked like pride and mounted. "This isn't finished," he said. Adeline met his eyes. "It is for her," she said, and looked down at Rosie. Orson rode away without dust. The yard breathed. Someone laughed and stopped themselves. Someone cried and did not stop. Wade put a hand on the porch rail until the tremor passed. Adeline leaned into him without leaning. That evening, the sheriff stayed. He sat at the table and drank coffee gone cold, and spoke of affidavits and charges and lines that had finally been crossed. "He pushed too far," the sheriff said. "In daylight." Wade nodded. "That's when men forget themselves." Adeline set Rosie down and covered her. "What happens now?" The sheriff folded his hands. "Now the town remembers who stood where." He left at dusk. The fire held. The fur whispered again and went still. That night, Adeline could not sleep. She rose and stood by the window, watching the dark learn the shape of the land. Wade came and stood behind her, close enough to share breath. "I almost ran again," she said. "I know," Wade said. "Don't leave me again." She turned and rested her forehead against his chest. He did not move. He did not speak. He let the moment do what it needed. Morning came clean. The doctor returned with papers and a grin he did not try to hide. "It's done," he said. "Charges filed. Pike's badge won't mean what it used to." Adeline exhaled like she had been holding her breath since winter. The town changed after that. Not all at once, not completely, But it changed. Knocks came before parcels. Names were spoken instead of guessed. The road learned new habits. Wade took down the sign at the gate and burned it. He kept the nails. One afternoon, he brought out a board and a chisel and set it above the hearth. He worked slow, careful, letters clean. Adeline watched and said nothing. When he finished, he stepped back. Rosie Vale, Adeline Shaw, Wade Mercer. Adeline touched the wood. Her hand shook once and steadied. "You're sure?" Wade nodded. "Every day." Rosie toddled across the floor and slapped the beam with her palm, laughing at the sound. That evening, Wade brought out the ring again and set it on the table. "This isn't payment," he said. "It isn't rescue." Adeline picked it up and turned it once in the light. "It's a promise," she said. He did not kneel, he did not rush. He asked plain like a man who had learned where strength lived. "Stay," he said. "With me. With her." Adeline closed her eyes. When she opened them, the answer was already there. "I am," she said. They did not put the ring on yet. They put it back with the papers, where promises waited until they were needed. The fur caught the last light and kept it. The fire burned low and steady. The road listened and said nothing. For the first time, the silence did not feel like waiting. It felt like holding. Autumn came the way truth does, quiet at first, then everywhere. The fir held its green when the rest of the fence line went gold. Wade took that as a sign, though he did not say so. He split wood and stacked it neat. Adeline put up jars and labeled them careful, her hand steady, her letters plain. Rosie learned to walk without asking permission and fell without fear because hands always came. Paper stopped knocking. When it showed its face again, it did so properly. Filed, stamped, finished. The sheriff rode out once more, hat in hand, and left with nothing to add. Orson Pike did not ride with him. The badge did not shine anymore. The town adjusted. That was the word Wade used for it. Doors opened. Voices softened. Not everyone smiled, but enough people knocked. On a clear morning, the doctor came with one last page and set it on the table. "Final," he said. "Signed." Adeline read it once, then again. She closed her eyes and laughed, small and breathless, like someone stepping into warm water after cold. "It's done," Wade said. She nodded. "It's ours." Rosie banged a spoon on the table and laughed like she understood. Wade lifted her and spun once, just enough to steal a giggle and give it back. That afternoon, Wade fixed the last hinge on the back door. Adeline swept and did not hurry. When the sun slid west, Wade brought out the ring again, not as a question this time, but as a thing that had learned its hour. They stood at the table with the ledger closed and the window open. The smell of apples came in from the yard. Rosie sat on the floor and stacked blocks she had stolen from somewhere. "This isn't a bargain," Wade said, because he needed to say it once more. "I know," Adeline said. He did not kneel. He did not make a speech. He held the ring out like a man offering his hands. "Choose me," he said. "Choose us." Adeline took the ring and held it a moment, as if weighing something that could not be weighed. Then she slid it on and nodded. "I do," she said, "every day." They stood there until the room learned them again. They did not marry that week. They did not rush. They planted instead. The fir took another inch. Wade brought home a sapling for the far fence and set it where the wind ran hardest. Adeline dug the hole and laughed when dirt got into her boot. Rosie tried to help and mostly made mud. "What is it?" Rosie asked, because she had learned the question mattered. "Another promise," Wade said. "Two," Adeline said, and kissed Rosie's hair. The first frost came and went. The creek went quiet and then loud again. Winter tested the door and found it strong. Wade put new glass in the window and sealed it right. Adeline stitched thicker curtains. Rosie learned the word home and used it for everything she liked. On Christmas Eve, the bell rang once, not for warning, not for meeting, but for the old reason. Wade lit the lantern and left it burning in the window because some habits deserved keeping. Adeline sang the hymn she knew all the words to now. Rosie clapped at the chorus and fell asleep before it finished. They sat by the fire and did not speak of the past because it sat with them without asking. Wade watched the flame and felt the quiet settle where panic had lived. Adeline leaned into his shoulder and felt the ache ease, not gone but carried. We made it. Morning came white and clean. The town sent bread and apples and did not expect thanks. Wade took Rosie outside and showed her how breath makes clouds. Adeline watched from the door and held the ring like a thought she meant to keep. By spring, the fir stood taller. By summer, the peas climbed. By autumn again, the names above the hearth had learned the house. One evening, Wade carved a notch into the porch rail and stopped. He set the knife down and looked at Adeline. "I won't carve anything that isn't true," he said. Adeline nodded. "Then don't." They stood together and watched the light go. The road lay quiet, not empty, just done with them for now. Later, when the fire burned low, Rosie slept between them on the rug, one hand on Wade's boot, the other fisted in Adeline's skirt. Wade reached for Adeline's hand and held it because holding was something he knew how to do. "What happens if the road comes back?" Adeline asked. Wade thought of winter nights and noon threats and the word that had finally stuck. "We stand," he said, "and we choose." Adeline smiled. "That's all anyone can do." Outside, the wind moved through the fir and learned the shape of staying. Inside, the fire held enough to last until morning. Their story did not end. It learned how to keep its promises. As the fire settles and the wind grows quiet, this story leaves us with something gentle and true. Out on the wide prairie, where winters take more than they give, a family was not formed by blood alone, but by choice, patience, and courage. Wade did not win by force. Adeline did not stay out of fear, and little Rosie did not survive because the world was kind, but because two broken hearts chose to stand together when it would have been easier to walk away. For many of us, these moments feel familiar. Loss, doubt, long nights, and the quiet strength it takes to keep going when no one is watching. Perhaps that is why stories like this still matter. They remind us that love often arrives softly, not with thunder, but with steady hands and a willing heart. If this story stirred a memory or reminded you of someone you once loved or lost, we invite you to share that in the comments below. Your stories matter here. Please take a moment to like this video if it touched you, and subscribe for more Western love stories that honor faith, family, and resilience. And tell us, What town or country are you watching from? The fire is still warm, and there are many more stories yet to be told.